will notify you once you begin your broadcast. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, guys. How's it going? Can you guys confirm if we've got audio and visual and all that? And oops. Thanks, Allie. We got about 10 people signed in. So how's everybody feeling this morning? Just curious what the general sense is out there. Good? I'm glad Jody's good. I'm gonna wait a few more minutes while some attendees are just sort of climbing up. Yeah, I'm hoping to see you guys at the college too. I'm disappointed about that. But things changed. You better believe they changed. I don't know if you guys, Lydia, you're the only person who can't hear me, I think. You are the only person. What are my thoughts on COVID-19? I'm going to send you guys something a little bit fearful. Can you see my screen? There's my screen. Oh wait, let me take that off. Can you guys see me right now or not? I'm curious. Open something up here. I'll show it to you in a second. Okay. Yeah, can you see the screen? So I want you guys to check out this link. I'll post it later on for you. So Canada, everyone's been pretty relaxed about the virus right now. You got to remember, 3 weeks ago, Italy had zero or only a couple cases, right? And now it's through the roof, right? Because of exponential growth. And so within 48 hours, things go from being bad to really bad. And these little images that they have are a really good example of how quickly the virus has changed. So if you can you see this in your video on mine? I don't know if it's live enough or not. But there's these little videos that basically show how the virus spreads within a community and how quickly that happens. And this is an example of how the virus spreads when people are in quarantine. And then you can see how eventually the viruses still get out and infect the rest of the population. And so that's not really the effective way to control the virus, okay? And here's one where they start practicing social distancing, which is everything. This is why we're doing this online lecture now, is you can see these little dots are moving a lot slower because there's only a few people bumping around. And we don't want to be one of those people bumping around. So this is moderate, and you can see the amplitude and the curve and the number of people that get sick goes down. And then here's one where it's even more severe. And you can see very few people. And right now, I think there's in Ottawa, like the cases just, Ottawa's going to be an outbreak center if they don't contain it real fast. And the government's making an announcement today at 1 p.m. So I would listen to that. And they're shutting down all government, I think all government buildings are going to be shut down, and people will be working from home. Like my sister last night at 11 o'clock got the message from her superior telling her that basically no staff is to go into work. So you can see this is the bottom graph here this is what's happened basically in Italy on the left. And what we're trying to achieve in Canada, I'm hoping, is this extensive distancing where you have very few people get sick. And appreciate those diagrams that I showed you. One of the comments this guy said is it's not really realistic because those little dots that were bouncing around does not include people that are dying, right? And this is 30 times more dangerous than the flu. And so this is real, and it's going to get real fast in Canada, and we're just getting there now. And the biggest concern I have with this virus is we had a patient call. So to give you an example, right now, as of this morning, we're notifying, and it wasn't this way on Friday, but this morning we're notifying all of our patients. We're not seeing anyone face to face. We're only doing phone consults because the risk right now, we don't have any cases of Guelph, but the problem is that most people spreading it are asymptomatic. And so you don't have a fever, you don't even feel unwell, and you're out there spreading it to people. And one of my patients sent us an email saying, someone at work had gone to the Dominican Republic and may have been exposed and was told to go into quarantine, but they didn't, and they came to work. So I may have been exposed, but I'm feeling fine. So I think I'm okay for the appointment today. And so we're just like, yeah, no, we can't have anyone coming in. And for me, the last 2 days we've been stressing about this because I've been watching the numbers and everything, like minute by minute everywhere. And my parents are right now in Mexico. And on Friday, to give you an example, we had a group of us. We're like, you know what? Probably it's fine. Stay there. Let's just see what happens. Let's not try to rush home because airplanes and airports are going to be a bit crazy. And then by Sunday, everything changed, and we're just like, yeah, you have to get home like right now. And because you don't want to be stuck in a place like Mexico when the infrastructure collapses. And they just had a big music festival in Mexico City this weekend with 70,000 people. We had all these people in close contact. That's like a disaster for this. So this is, you watch movies like, 28 Days Later. It's maybe not quite as intense. We don't have like, zombies sprinting around and getting people, but the same sort of how these things spread and get out of control is pretty accurate in those things. So I think all you guys are not going to die from this. It's like I'm not worried about that. But I have a mother who's got a lung issue, and I've got a pregnant wife who's due next week. So so I'm usually not too worried about things, but I'm not taking this situation lightly at all, and it's very stressful. So watch this. I'll send this link. Please check it out. Send it to your friends and family because I think the government might be imposing something like this, but when you look at what's going on in Europe right now, Ireland just closed down all pubs. It's St. Patty's Day, and pubs are all closed. Restaurants are closed in other countries. I think the government's going to be shutting down all probably non-Canadians are going to deny access to Canada. Like we're the next 6 months are going to be very interesting. It's an unprecedented, virus in my lifetime, anyway. So. I heard there's going to be messages made that as of 4 p.m., everything other than grocery stores and pharmacies and such will be open. Everything other than grocery stores and will be open or closed. So I'm just reading some. I think most. To cover. I'm very hopeful that the government's just going to say everything's shut down and we got to contain this right now. Everything's closed. Yeah. I think that's what I've heard too. I've heard rumors. I have a friend who works in the government. My sister mentioned something that didn't get the whole story, but something. So I think everything's going to be shut down, and so that's good. But for you guys, what you should do is also limit your social interactions. Strict limitation on that. So, anyways. That's enough of that. So, so that's the best thing we can do for is limit social interactions. Apparently, I've been looking at what other things could people do. Because it's so new, we don't really know a whole lot. I mean, I mentioned quercetin was something that's being researched. Certainly, I would pound back some quercetin. Licorice has been shown to be effective against H1N1. It's more effective than a lot of antivirals, so I'd be taking some licorice tea. N-acetylcysteine has been shown for other models of influenza to reduce mortality, so prevent death from if you get it, and it acts as a mucolytic as well. So I would be taking some of that. Andrographis has been shown to be effective against some coronaviruses, I think, but I mean, definitely against colds and flus. It has a lot of really good research, and we're going to have to assume this behaves in. It may be more contagious and maybe a little more deadly, but the underlying mechanisms must be similar. So, I'd be taking andrographis, NAC, licorice. I'd probably take a garlic supplement too, whether it's going to work or if there's any research. I don't know. I take some quercetin as well. Why not? So that's kind of what I'm thinking. And there's other antivirals that we have, like those are some of the ones that I've been looking at for research. And then some other things that I would probably look at is bone set and lomatium, and there's other antivirals, but a lot of those are harder to get access to. So I just sort of mentioned a few that are easy to get access to. So you guys feeling more stressed now that I've shared my thoughts? Just curious. It's intense. It's intense that it changes so quickly. That's what's really intense about it. Any thoughts before I get started? And we'll have a little distraction. We'll talk about some less deadly things like heartburn. Anybody want to say anything? I need some companionship here. Yeah, your friends. Let me see if I can get that. I don't know if this. I'll post it as well. I don't know if did that go up there. I just send a link to you guys or not. I meant to send that to everyone. I don't know if so. Yeah, I just sent an email or a text to all my friends. I think this is key that everyone looks at this and watch those little dots bounce around, because I'm a relatively smart guy who knows some stuff about epidemiology and stuff. And when I watched that, I went, oh, wow, yeah, we got to shut the clinic down. And this is why we're doing that. I think this is really, 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 really important. And I think we all have mothers, grandparents that can potentially die from this. And this is like a real risk. Like my mom, very healthy. She's got this underlying lung issue. If she catches this, this will probably kill her, unless she's lucky. And so I'm worried. So, so there we go. Anyways, doom and gloom. Don't usually like to be negative, but let's be real here. And I think we were all taking this not seriously enough. And even on Friday when the college, I was like, I'm surprised the college hasn't changed, canceled any cancels yet or made them online. And all of a sudden I went, oh, they did. So, so I hope to see you guys. If you ever see me in public, come up and introduce yourself and say, yeah, I'm in that pandemic class. Nice to meet you. Oops. Okay. So, with all that being said, Dr. Pickrell, I don't think is going to lecture next week, so I'll continue to lecture my stuff as long as a baby remains inside my wife's belly. So between the coronavirus and my wife expecting a baby next week, there's a lot of uncertainty in my schedule. So one thing. Okay. Is there anything else? Let me know. Give me just 1 second, please. Okay, so what we're going to start with today is just a quick little summary of how do you actually prescribe herbs. And one of the ways that we prescribe herbs is in tinctures. Now, you guys may not have had a chance yet to watch the little herbal formulations lecture, but that kind of goes through a little summary of different ways that we can recommend herbs to patients. So you can do it in teas, or you can boil the roots up, or you can do alcohol extracts. So lots of different ways that you can get herbs out to the public. What I'm going to talk about right now is basically how you would go about figuring out what herbs to give a patient in like a tincture form, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is you take a case. Someone comes in, they got a bunch of concerns, you ask them a bunch of questions, and based on that, based on the symptoms and the signs that they have, so it could be some lab work, or it could be I've got heartburn or bloating and constipation, then you create a list of actions that would be appropriate for it. And you want to have like a list of primary actions, so the most essential things that you want to address with the herbs. And then if you can address some of the secondary issues at the same time, that would be great. So you kind of divide it for, different types of actions. And then you have to take into consideration safety concerns whenever you're creating a herbal formula. So if the patient comes in and they've got heartburn and high blood pressure, you got to make sure you don't give something that's going to aggravate the blood pressure, even though you may make the heartburn better, or at least monitor it. The other thing you want to do is, pregnancy. You want to make sure you don't hurt pregnant women and their babies, right? So finally, you then go through and you make a list of the herbs that you want to recommend to the person. And based on the actions, so you may be able to find a combination of herbs that addresses all the primary indications and also addresses some of the secondary indications. Now, one of the problems is if you try to address, if someone has heartburn, diabetes, high blood pressure, cancer, depression, all these different things, it may be impossible to create a single formula that addresses every single concern. Or if you can, you might have to have the person drinking, 250 mils of tincture every day, which is prohibitively expensive, and also they'll just be drunk on alcohol. So you have to kind of be selective and say, okay, how can I cost effectively address the main concerns with the tincture, and then find other ways to address maybe some of the other concerns through their diet or whatever it may be, okay? Now, every single herb that you want to prescribe has a reference range, okay, like a therapeutic dosage range. So it's maybe half a teaspoon to 1 teaspoon 2 to 3 times a day, or maybe 10 drops, 10 to 15 drops before meals, or whatever it is. But you need to figure it out, and because every herb has different ones, it can get really complicated trying to figure out the calculation, especially on the fly. And so when you're in the clinic, you don't have a lot of time between patients to sit there and try to do the math. So I'm going to show you a little trick I've devised for you guys. So here we got a woman that's coming in. She's got digestive upset. She's got gallstones. Her ultrasound shows that she's got 3 gallstones ranging from about 1/2 to 1 centimeter. She also has a fatty liver. She gets occasionally cramping in her upper right quadrant when she eats fatty food. She tends to be bloated and heavy after meals. She gets heartburn. So there's a whole bunch of symptoms going on there. And then her blood work reveals she's got high cholesterol and high blood sugar and her liver enzymes are elevated. So there's a whole lot going on with this patient. Now I'm doing this case very, very quickly, but I look at all this and I'm processing all that. And I'm like, okay, she's got all these signs and symptoms going on. On the left-hand side, gallstones, cramping, bloating, heartburn. Now I would say if for gallstones, that may be the primary indication as well as the heartburn, but if I can address the cholesterol and the elevated liver enzymes at the same time, that would be awesome. So I choose my actions that I really, really think are essential. The bloating in this case, I don't need to include bloating in my tincture as a carminative. I could just tell them to drink some chamomile and peppermint tea. That might be a way to address that. So we got our actions, figure out what you want to use, and then you can just jot down some herbs that you want to use. And especially when you start getting overlapping actions that the herbs have where it can address multiple things, that makes for a good formula. Now, on the right-hand side, this is like the reference range illustrated by for the dosage range for the herbs. So the daily amount of gentian would be varying from, this is the total daily amount, would be going from about half a mil to about whatever that is, to 12 mils. Now appreciate, one of the things that's important to recognize is that different herbal textbooks will have different reference ranges. So one may be 2 to 6 mils a day, one might be 1 to 5 mils per day, one might be 2 to 10 mils per day. The reason why there's differences between that is herbs are very forgiving. The more toxic the plant is, the more precise, or the more toxic the drug or medicine is, the more precise you need to be with how much you give. So when you're looking at, something like Tylenol, which is a drug that potentially toxic, but not too toxic, it's really important that you do not exceed the recommended dose. You get into other things. I'm trying to think of a toxic medicine. If you were to take a drug or like atropine or deadly nightshade, the amount that you would take, you'd have to be very careful not to exceed that because there are serious side effects. Now, if you were to exceed the recommended dose on any of these herbs, nothing really bad would happen. You just probably feel awful. If you drink a whole cup of this, I think it would just give you some diarrhea and you might throw up. But it's unlikely to cause any real serious problems, maybe some digestive cramping, stuff like that. But that would be really high. So the dose that's listed is mostly, from a practical standpoint, what is kind of the ideal dose you can use without having to worry about causing harm. And, I think you could probably double this without causing harm. But this is kind of a sweet spot where it's cost effective to do it in this range, okay? So when you look at, we have to figure out how to get all these together. Now, in this case, if we ended up choosing the amount that's listed here, you could decide that you want to be able to give basically 7.5 mils is your serving size. So that would be 1.5 teaspoons 3 times a day. And this would be the amount inside each teaspoon or each dose that you give. And then in the bottle, in order to get that, you'd have to be able to break it down. So if you try to do this math in your head, it takes some time, okay? Now what's cool is I create a little herbal calculator. Spent about $4,000 to create it. If you guys want to buy it for 20 bucks, you can, okay? I'm not going to make my money back probably with this thing. So what you do is you choose the herbs you want to have, in your formula. You get a bunch of herbs, you say adjust the dose, and it automatically rounds it up to like half a teaspoon or 1 teaspoon. So this is 2 teaspoons 3 times a day. I'm like, you know what? I don't think we need to go that high. I want to see if I can lower the dose to get it so it's more cost effective for the patient and do that. Then it's like, now we got it down to 1 teaspoon 3 times a day for the therapeutic amount. And what's cool about it is you fill in your patient's name, choose the doctor, give a title to it, and it'll create a label that you can stick on your bottle as well. And it automatically does a calculation for the bottle size. So here we've got 500 ml bottle, and it'll tell me how much of each herb to put into it. It tells me where they are in the dosage range. And if you decide you don't want my dosage range, I've made it so that you can go and customize how much the daily dose is for each of the herbs, and you can add other herbs to it, okay? So that's a little calculator. I haven't actually officially released it. I finished making it in the fall. I've had a few people buy it and just play around with it, but I haven't really launched it as much. Normally what I've done is I have a website called ND Assist. I don't think I showed you guys this. And the idea with the website is you can go in here and you can type in, let's say, GERD, and it allows you to look at products and herbs that are indicated for that. And then you can go and read the little monographs on it. And it discusses, gives a little summary, gives your actions, constituents, and the dosage range. And it's supposed to link to PubMed articles related to that. It's not a very lucrative website for me. In fact, I probably lose money with this. I mean, it does have some revenue from advertising, but it's probably with naturopaths. It's such a small community of people. I sell access to the website for 20 bucks. If you guys want access to the website, and I'll throw in the little herbal prescribing tincture thing for free for you guys. Just to, you guys can test it out if you want. So, I'll post a link if you guys want to get access. I think it's a really good little tool. I wish it was more lucrative so I could justify spending more time on it. But fortunately or unfortunately, clinic is far more lucrative, but it's more of something I'm passionate about. If I was smart, I would make a website for the entire world, not just naturopaths, but anyways. So that's a fun little thing. So that gives you an idea, okay? So I'll post some stuff on that. I think you guys will find that useful. There's no obligation at all to buy it. You know, here I am self-promoting during class time. I mean, there's a bit of a conflict of interest there, but whatever. You know, I'm not making a lot of money, okay? I think students love it from what they've seen it. And I think I've been doing this for about 15 years. So I'll send you guys some information to the class first. So that's just a little summary of what I'm going to be talking about now. Now we're going to go into more detail on how to treat gastrointestinal issues. And this is my favorite area to treat in practice. I would say that I have made a point to become a self-proclaimed expert in gastrointestinal issues. And I sort of design, really attract a lot of people with this. That being said, there's some things that I would say that I'm awesome at when it comes to GI conditions. And there's a few conditions that I get results. I don't, it's hard to cure people of Crohn's disease. You can make them a lot better, but it's hard to totally cure them. It's a challenging one. IBS, you can cure them. Heartburn, you can cure them. Cure is a very strong word, but it's true. But it also depends on so many different factors, okay? So in general, when I treat someone with a gastrointestinal issue, I would say in general, I treat almost like a lot of conditions the same way. Number one thing is I change the diet, okay? I remove food sensitivities. I would say assume everybody has some food sensitivity contributing to their problem to some degree, okay? I really strongly have found that. And then when I was a student, I was like, people are gluten-free. That's silly. I don't think everyone's gluten-free. Not everyone is gluten-free. In fact, some people can eat lots of gluten and they're fine. Other people, they eat gluten, they're not fine. Some people, it's deadly for them. Other people, they can eat gluten, but they can't eat eggs, or they can't eat quinoa or flaxseed. It's interesting. So I'm going to give you a little tip on that. Okay. Now, the other thing is always remove sugar and balance their blood sugar, okay? So a lot of people just have bad eating habits and they eat poor foods in the morning. If their blood sugar is wrong or they eat taking too much sugar in their diet, that's going to cause all sorts of problems. We're not designed to eat a lot of sugar. So it can make heartburn worse. It can make IBS worse. It makes all these conditions worse in general. Also in general, I start with the first two with everyone. And then if things aren't getting better, then I think, well, maybe there's an infection going on. Now, I've been doing this long enough that sometimes I jump right off the bat to dealing with an impossible infection as well. But a lot of people with digestive upset, it could be a bacteria, it could be a yeast, and there is not necessarily any really great diagnostic ways to identify all the bugs that could be causing the issue. So sometimes you have to rely on symptoms and medical history rather than a stool sample. If it comes back positive, great. If it comes back negative, that doesn't mean they don't have something, okay? Also, giving digestive tonics is often a good thing with most digestive conditions. Maybe if you've got stomach ulcer, you don't do that. I would say that I often do that. Probiotics, I think you could justify giving probiotics to everyone. And I don't always give them to people on the first visit, but often. You want to improve bowel movements. And by doing that, if you change the diet, remove food sensitivities, increase the amount of fiber, maybe a little bit more fruit, they're going to do better. And then if there are specific symptoms that the person's experiencing that's causing pain, then I want to address that, okay? So I want to be able to, if someone's got a lot of bloating and cramping pain, even if it's not the root cause, even if the root cause is something else, you want to be able to give them something that makes them feel better. Because, often some people will say, no, you don't want to treat the symptoms. You got to deal with the underlying cause. Don't suppress the symptoms. Sometimes you have to suppress the symptoms. You got to make those patients feel better. Otherwise, they won't come back to see you. If someone's got bad heartburn and it's due to a food sensitivity or H. pylori, yeah, you got to address that. But in the meantime, you could give them a demulcent to make them feel better. So they're like, oh, I got my burning's gone down. This guy must know what he's talking about. I'm going to go and see him spend $80 to see him on his second visit or whatever it is, So we got to make people feel better, but we also don't want to forget about addressing the underlying cause of the problem, okay? And I want to emphasize that although we're talking about herbal medicine is often unnecessary for digestive issues if you address the diet, okay? Diet number one, herbs, good support, relieve symptoms, sometimes will cure the person, but usually it's a food diet issue that's contributing the most to the problem, okay? And it would be irresponsible for me not to say that. So when it comes to herbal actions, we've already discussed all these herbal actions. You kind of already know what we're going to talk about here. We're just kind of trying to bring it all together for us. We've talked about the herbal actions, we've talked about the herbs. Now let's talk about cases. And I love this lecture because I get to show you all these cool things that I've done in practice that you guys will do one day. I just document everything I do, and I'm honest about, I think I'm a good doctor. I'm still learning all the time. I will be a better doctor in 10 years. But if you can distill some of my little clinical pearls I've learned over the years and follow some of the stuff now, you can be, good faster. It's not good English, I don't think. But anyways, so these are a bunch of actions that you want to use. I'm not going to go through each one of them because we're going to come up again, but that's just a quick little overview of some of the big ones, okay? So first comes to first. I'm going to give you my little easy elimination diet for people. I give this to every single person who comes in on the first visit. Every single person, okay? And if I don't do it on the first visit, there may be some unusual reason for that. But I will probably give this to almost every single person. I'm kind of changing it. When you say every, that's very black and white. So almost every single person. But every single person with a digestive condition for sure, okay? And so rather than doing so a couple ways you can determine food sensitivities is you can do a blood test that I use sometimes. I've I've run the IgG food sensitivity test about 1,000 times between my wife and I. We have the average result for over about hundreds of people. I put them all in a database, and I have the average results for all those people. So based on that, I kind of created um, a starting spot based on my experience and my evidence that I've seen in practice. And so gluten's not as bad as some things. I still do more. I still get people to limit or reduce. But the three big things I would say that are affecting people is sugar, dairy, and eggs. Those are the top three things that I find really cause a lot of problems for people. Um, and almost everybody has some issues with this. So sugar, all sugars, even like excess fruit juices and natural sugars are going to be an issue. You got to watch that. With dairy, one thing I'll say is when you have milk, you've got the curds and the whey. The curds make cheese. The whey component is in milk, yogurt, sour cream, ice cream, things like that. That's one that really bugs people. Most people tolerate hard cheeses pretty good, like cheddar and Parmesan and even mozzarella. Most people, but the milk, drinking milk, even like a little bit in your coffee or tea, could be enough to set you off. Now, if people react to cow's milk, they might be okay with cow cheese. If they're not okay with cow cheese, they're probably okay with goat sheep cheeses. And in rare circumstances, if they can't do that, then they might be okay with buffalo cheeses. If you suspect that the person has a dairy sensitivity, you can either remove all dairy for a couple of weeks and see what happens, or just remove the milk component and then, consider removing the cheese anyways. I don't think dairy is good for you to eat in excess, but a little bit's okay. Whey protein powder, that gives everybody a stomach ache, it seems like. And you can become a little bit tolerant to it if you eat enough of it. You do develop some tolerance, but it doesn't mean it's not still having an impact, okay? Eggs, I love eggs. I don't think eggs are good for you. I really don't. I think if you guys, your age, I mean, I'm assuming most of you guys are in your 20s, you can eat eggs. You're not going to have a heart attack. If you're 60 and you've got heart disease or higher risk for heart disease, will increase your risk of dying. And if you want to debate the research with me, I'm more than happy to. There was a recent study that came out saying, now, first of all, we're only talking about a food sensitivity that's unrelated to the negative effects that eggs have on heart disease and cancer risk, okay? But there's a recent study that came out. I saw it on a keto post on Reddit. I like Reddit. And although I get downvoted I like following the ketos and the vegans. I got downloaded on both. They're downvoted on both of those for presenting some evidence that contradicted some people's beliefs, and they get mad at me. But anyways, the study said that eggs don't cause heart disease. And here's an example of a study. 80% of the participants they looked at trying to evaluate the risk of eggs and heart disease were women between 25 and 50. The risk of those women having heart disease is extremely low. The second thing is the conclusion that everyone read is they don't cause harm, but the study even said over 7 eggs per week in the study group they looked at, which was 80% women that don't get heart attacks, showed that there could be an issue. But appreciate, and then they argued, well, the people who had issues, it seemed like they had other kind of complications. But I want to emphasize here is that when you have 80% of your women who don't get heart attacks, it buffers the data set for that 20% of men that I actually care about, who are higher risk, that we need to look at that. So, you guys can smoke and eat and do whatever the hell you want in your 20s, and you're probably not going to die, okay? If you do that when you're 60, you will die, or you won't die. You will, we're all going to die sometime. You're more likely to die. So the point is we need to look at eating habits of the high risk people to draw a conclusion of whether these things are safe or not. And so this study suggested that eating more than 7 eggs per day could still be harmful for you, or per week. But you know what? People on ketogenic diet are eating like 3 eggs a day, and they, no matter what kind of evidence you present, they argue that it's epidemiological, it's not good study. It's pretty compelling to me. The point is I don't think eggs are good for you. I do like eggs, and I still eat them, but I don't think it's good to eat 3 eggs a day. I think eating 3 eggs a week still increases your risk of heart disease according to some research. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know because there's so much mixed information. Who's funding the studies and they're doing all this sneaky statistics. But my advice is eat some eggs. And I give them to my kids because I think when you're a baby, when you're young, if you don't have a food sensitivity, eating meat and dairy and eggs is going to promote growth, which is good. But that same promotion when you're 60 is bad for you. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. Okay. Uh, so, uh, I'm going to check that out. I haven't seen anything with that. I don't doubt that there's degrees. Like I think omega-3 eggs are going to be better, or like free-range eggs are probably going to be better than, factory farm eggs and everything else. But between the cholesterol and between the methionine, there's something in eggs that is linked to mortality. Uh, and if I'm wrong, I will change my mind, but I'm not sure. Pea-based protein powder, someone's asking about that, is yeah, Tara, there's lots of, the problem with the epidemiological studies is you can't state cause and effect because we don't know for certain. And if you're eating egg McMuffins and you're eating a highly processed diet, then that's not good. But there's trends we're seeing. And so that's why I'm like going, the point is if you do the breakfast that I recommend you're doing, not only are you avoiding eggs that may be bad for you, which I'm convinced they are, but I could be wrong, but you're also now eating something that we know actually appears from an epidemiological studies to reduce heart disease risk. And you could say, oh, people who eat nuts are healthier and everything, but yeah, that's the whole point. Let's do things that are healthy. So everything's dose dependent. So even the problem is, going back to the study I was looking at, even if 7 eggs per week is safe for people, which I don't think it is, but let's say if it was, that doesn't mean 3 eggs a day is safe. You have to, and it may be that 7 eggs per day is safe for women under the age of 50, but not for men over the age of 50, right? Like there's a lot of things, but if you just read the headlines and draw your own conclusions, we got to be critical, okay? Same thing with honey. I like honey. And I don't disagree with the honey. I think some honey is good for you, but not too much. What was I going to say there? Oh, I've forgotten. Eggs. So the point is I'm not worried about you guys eating eggs. I'm worried about my father eating 3 eggs a day. Because when you're in your 70s, your risk of dying from a heart attack is high. Therefore, if you increase your risk by 50% or 20% or whatever it is, that has a very significant effect on your health. When you're 20, if your risk of having a heart attack is 0.1% and you double your risk, the risk of having a heart attack is still insignificant. You understand what I'm saying? Pea protein. Sorry. When you look at my results for the food sensitivities, when I've pulled hundreds of people, the number one food intolerance is the whey component. The number two is egg whites. The number three, I think it's pea protein. And for some reason, for example, I had one vegan come in, and I'm a big fan of veganism. I'm not a vegan myself, but I think that's great to do when you're older. Not so good when you're maybe a baby and when you're young, just because it's hard to get your iron and get the things that help promote growth. But you can totally do it. But I think when you're older, it's good. Men should be vegans, especially, but they're not. But I've had one woman in particular, her diet was impeccable. She ate pea protein every day. She had colitis and was on meds. And I looked at her diet without even doing any testing. I just said, remove pea protein, because I've seen that aggravate people. And completely cured of her colitis. And it was just one thing, pea protein. So often soy-based protein is better than pea protein as far as from a hypoallergenic standpoint. Okay. Uh-oh. Turn off webcams. Okay, I'm going to turn off my webcam for a little bit. Can you guys still hear me okay? On this side, I find yeast, basically beer and bread are your main sources. So here's a few different yeast-free varieties of grains. This is a Dempfmeyer rye bread. It's a yeast-free rye bread, sourdough. It's low in gluten. It's not gluten-free. I don't get people to go gluten-free unless they're celiac. I recommend kamut wraps over wheat wraps. Kamut's a cousin of wheat, lower in gluten. So most people tolerate the first two. and don't have to give up eating bread entirely. And I just say, limit or restrict the amount of baguettes and buns and stuff that you eat, and pizza and stuff like that. Not everyone. Strict elimination is necessary for some, but not everyone. Okay. Now, is gluten good for you? Probably not in excess, but a little bit's not going to hurt you. Okay. Also, I get people to avoid barley and corn. I don't think that's good. Nuts and seeds, legumes, and fruit, less of an issue, but certainly bananas, I think, from a fruit standpoint, get them to avoid that. The peas, watch that. Cashews, peanuts, pistachios. I find that they're not as much of an issue in almonds, but it's kind of like, it's a bit of a gray area there. I can't really, it's still on my radar to look at, okay? So that's my experience. That's what I do. I think it's pretty easy to get people to do that. Sometimes I just get people to do the first page and not the second page. For me, if I eat pizza and drink beer, I get bloated and I get eczema and I get rashy. But I still do it because I like it. I just don't do it very often. Okay. This is what I recommend to everyone who comes in, the healthy breakfast. I get them to grind up their flaxseed, their chia seeds, and you don't have to grind the hemp. Mix all three of the seeds together. Keep it in the fridge so it doesn't go rancid. And then you get a bowl of fruit. You throw in 3 tablespoons of seeds. You add a handful of walnuts. You can add some coconut milk or almond milk to it if you want to. You can throw it in the blender and make a shake. If you've got frozen berries, you add hot water, then add the seeds to it. And the nuts, and you get like a porridge-like consistency. So the benefit of this is rich in fiber, good for constipation and diarrhea. It helps with weight loss because it balances your blood sugar. So even though it's got some carbohydrates in it, the protein, the fat, the fiber, all is great for balancing blood sugar so that you don't have highs and lows and snacking later on in the day. I've had people where this is the main thing I do, and a few other limiting carbohydrates in their diet to some degree and eating more vegetable-based proteins, and diabetes goes away. This breakfast is high in omega-3s, low in omega-6s, so it's good for inflammation. It's loaded with polyphenols. The flaxseed's got the lignans in it. The chia's got other phenol compounds in the shells of that, as well as the walnuts and the berries. So this thing also feeds your good bacteria from the probiotics in the prebiotics in the fiber and the anthocyanidins and some of these phenol compounds. So this thing's like does everything. Okay, lowers cholesterol, lowers blood pressure, helps with depression, helps with diabetes, helps with weight loss, helps prevent cancer. So compare this to eggs that might increase all-cause mortality. This breakfast decreases all-cause mortality. So this is what I eat all the time. I still have bacon and eggs as a treat very infrequently. I don't think it'll ever cause me any harm. But if you're eating bacon and eggs every day, it will probably contribute to your demise, in my opinion. And like I said, could be wrong. I don't think so, but could be. Okay. So those are my little handouts. You guys can have them if you want. And if you guys want to like steal this and use it on your patients, go for it. It works. I've been using this for years, and patients, 90% of patients love it. Some people are like, oh, I get sick of it. I don't like your bird food. Okay, fine. You eat whatever you want. But now, if you're in a hurry, you could grab an orange, an apple, and a handful of nuts, and that would be also kind of a good substitute. When I travel, I do take the seeds with me, keep it out of sunlight. It might not be in the fridge. It should be okay. But if you leave it out too long, they can go rancid, so you got to watch that. All right? So that's a good little intro. Any questions before I move on to the first condition? No, you guys are with me? Yep, okay. I'm going to put that back on. If the internet's slow, I'll turn that off again. Just let me know, okay? So indigestion. What is indigestion? Indigestion means you eat something you don't feel well. And it's an umbrella term that can be caused by lots of different things. Certainly, Christmas time, Thanksgiving, people tend to get a little bit of indigestion because you've just eaten too much heavy foods. You know, rich gravies, lots of sugar, dessert. You poked in an extra piece of pie when you shouldn't have. So, overeating in general basically compromises your ability to break things down. So it sits there and you just feel yucky. So that'll happen to anyone who overeats. Now, if you have food intolerances or food sensitivities, these aren't non-allergies. These are like a type 2 immune response that can occur with foods. A lot of people have these to varying degrees, and the only symptoms they may have is they eat something, they just feel kind of bloated and gassy, might get a little bit of burping. I see that a lot with eggs, for example. Can happen with dairy, with whey protein, lots of different reasons. So, you know, that's more likely to occur in people that are not overeating, okay? You may not normally get indigestion and you're not overeating and you're avoiding your food sensitivities and still get indigestion sometimes. And in those cases, that may result from what's called atonic digestion, meaning you got a lazy digestive tract for some reason, okay? And that could be stress or you're convalescing from an illness. Maybe eating too many sugary things and sort of suppressing digestion, maybe some medications that could be contributing. So we'll come back to that in a second. Also, finally, certain infections can cause indigestion as well, okay? The medical term for indigestion is dyspepsia. So general symptoms include that heaviness, burping, bloating, heartburn, may be associated with it as well, maybe some nausea. So it could be a very simple treatment, like removing eggs and dairy from the diet, or it may be more complicated where you have to fight off some kind of infection, okay? So atonic digestion means that the person's digestive tract is able to function correctly or effectively, but it's not getting either enough stimulus or it's being suppressed. And another thing that kind of often people get diagnosed with is called hypochlorhydria, which means low stomach acid. And so if you're basically under stress, you've got a bland diet, maybe you're old, maybe as we get age, digestion doesn't work as well, or you're taking certain drugs, or you just got over the flu and your stomach's still a bit dodgy and not working correctly, then that's all falls under that atonic digestion. Now, it's not uncommon for people, if they have troubles digesting food, their bowels might be a little sluggish. If it's chronic, they might develop gallstones, because if your digestion is not working optimally, then that means bile is being stagnant and hanging around the gallbladder, and then stones start to precipitate out and form. Another thing that can occur is reflux is often associated with it. So it's amazing, once you, just as an aside, with coronavirus, you become aware of how much you want to play with your face. I've got like a nose hair that's tickling me right now and driving me nuts, and I'm trying not to, wiggle my nose with my hand. And even though I just washed my hands 2 minutes ago, I'm still trying to get in the habit of being mindful of not touching my face without washing my hands, which we all should be doing that all the time anyways. But anyways, it's just distracting. Atonic digestion, the symptoms would be like poor appetite, which is anorexia, doesn't refer to like the eating disorder necessarily. That's called anorexia nervosa. This is just general anorexia, is the medical term for lack of appetite. Bloating, heaviness, burping, heartburn, nausea is all going to fall under that. So how do we treat that? So I made these little diagrams that might help to understand my approach to it. Is first thing, avoid food sensitivities, stimulate digestion. I want you guys to think about, how would I stimulate digestion? Okay. Increase appetite. Okay, how might I do that as well? Protect the mucous membranes if there's some reflux and heartburn going on. What do I want to do for that? Manage stress. So that's kind of lifestyle stuff you might be doing in addition to dealing with the diet. So, if someone's under a lot of stress, I might say, you got to exercise more. You might start doing mindfulness-based practice, or go to the movies and relax once in a while, whatever it may be. Not now. Don't go to the movies now, but That'll just add to your stress. Improve your eating habits. So not just what you eat, but when you eat. So if your eating schedule is really erratic, your body does not have that routine. Like your body wants to automate. It wants to wake up and poop, eat, go to bed all at the same time, right? And when you start, you know, eating at sometimes at 11, sometimes at 7, you know, all over the place, it really confuses your body. So eventually it's like, well, I'm not going to try to figure out when to produce digestive enzymes and release stomach acid, everything. I'm just going to give up on it. So our bodies want to automate. So having dietary routine is important. Sitting down and eating, you know, like when you think about it, when I grew up, I'm not, my family's not religious, but I remember coming home. My mother's a school teacher, so she'd be cooking dinner around 4 or 5. I smelt the food. I saw her cooking. We'd sit down. Everyone would say grace, even though we're not religious. We'd, you know, talk about our days, eat the meal. Like there's a ritual involved with it. And when you are grabbing fast food, eating it in the car on the way home, which I've been guilty of doing that before, you're really not getting a lot of good cues to promote digestion. So your likelihood of having a little indigestion by eating on the run and having erratic meal times increases, especially if you do that in combination with extra stress going on, which often happens when you're stressed or eating in weird times. And then if you happen to be sick or you're old or whatever, elderly, it all adds up. And finally, you might need to reduce nausea as part of the picture. So what types of herbal actions would we use for a case like this? So we know bitters are great because they promote digestion. Boom, that's like the #1 thing you do for atonic digestion, okay? And that's going to include stomachic, cholagogues, choleratic. Often I'll only give people gentian. That's the only single herb I will give them, okay? Carminatives you could do as well to address the bloating. I don't always do this, but you could do that, okay? So often when you leave an Indian restaurant, they have all those anise and fennel and all those seeds at the door. Don't eat those now because you'll definitely get coronavirus if you have some of those. But under normal circumstances, you might take those. It'll help to relax sphincters, help with bloating and gas, which people often get if they eat a lot of butter, chicken, and naan bread. And it'll help to get foods to descend, although it'll probably make reflux worse. But those can help. But if you do the bitters and remove food sensitivities, you may not need these. If people are getting reflux or heartburn, a little bit of demulcents could help, like licorice, slippery elm, marshmallow. And if they have a little bit of nausea, gentian could help with the nausea. If you break the food down better, it might be helpful. Ginger could be used as part of the whole picture as well, okay? You may not need to use all these things. You might just be able to use just gentian. So I'll give you a case. Here I had a 65-year-old woman. She comes in with basically indigestion and osteoporosis. This is a real case. Lots of burping, especially with red meat, pain in this area here. Not so much burning, but rather pressure, okay? So that's kind of more of that's how she described it. She gets it a few hours after a meal and it gets worse when she's laying down at night. She just kind of says in general her stomach feels low and sluggish, and she does have a history of a hiatal hernia, and that's where part of the stomach can loop up above the diaphragm and increase the risk of reflux. She was supplementing with HCl, and that's basically stomach acid that you can take in pill form, and she was doing that to help with digestion. Now the problem is if you have something called hypochlorhydria, meaning low stomach acid, taking HCl can be beneficial. But if you've got low stomach acid, chances are your whole digestive tract is sluggish. It's not just the stomach acid, but it's going to be the enzymes from your pancreas, the bile from your gallbladder, and also the enzymes, the saliva, and everything else. So I prefer to give digestive bitters first and only give HCl under certain circumstances. And she's taken a bunch of other supplements, and she also has osteoporosis. Now, one thing to be aware of with osteoporosis is that the bisphosphate drugs, one of the main side effects they have is reflux, okay? Jumping ahead. So this is 2016 study that said proton pump inhibitors and osteoporosis, there's definitely a risk for these. Not if you take them short term. I don't care if people take acid blocking drugs for a couple of weeks to heal an ulcer. No big deal. No harm will come from that. Okay. If you're on these acid blocking drugs for 10 years, which a lot of my patients who've come in to see me have been, they're like, I don't know why my doctor, I've just been on this. And I'm like, yeah, these have been shown to increase all-cause mortality, meaning it makes you die sooner, and definitely with osteoporosis. And what's interesting is I had the patient, I don't think it was this one, she was taking these drugs and her bones weren't that bad. And she was a yoga instructor and all these things. And when you looked at her risk factors and plugged it into an evidence-based model called number needed to treat, the recommendation on that was basically said, for this person, she was not really high enough risk to warrant these drugs. So the drugs aren't really going to prevent her from having a bone fracture or breaking her hip. And in fact, the problem is she goes on these drugs that aren't really going to help her that much because the risk of having a breaking hip is only about 1% anyways. But what ends up happening is she's now taking proton pump inhibitors to deal with the heartburn caused by the osteoporosis drugs, and those drugs increase the risk. So the drug for the osteoporosis isn't going to help much, and then the PPIs, the drugs, have the side effect of causing osteoporosis, so she's probably worse off taking medications, the two medications, than if she took none. High risk patients, you could argue it might be beneficial for them to take it, but in this case, not a great idea. What is the preferred form of these herbs? Tinctures, tea, or capsules? I'll get to that in a second. That's a very important, good question. Okay. So in her case, I figured she had dyspepsia, atonic digestion, food sensitivities, and reflux. So I gave her that red flag food handout I showed you guys before. I got her to eat a healthy breakfast. In this case, I gave her gentian in a tincture form, very small amounts. Just gave her a few drops before meals to promote digestion. I told her, if your heartburn gets worse, stop it, because that can happen with it. Okay. I also decided to give her DGL. If you remember, DGL is the deglycerinated licorice. So it increases mucus production, acts as a demulcent to help with the mucus production, but doesn't raise blood pressure. So that's good. And then I said, no snacking after dinner. That's my rule for every patient. They're not allowed to eat after dinner. No snacking. You guys are forbidden from snacking ever again after dinner. I'm forbidding you all from snacking after dinner. It's wrong. Unless you're drunk, and then you should eat Italian sausage before you go to bed to help with the hangover. Okay? Otherwise, you should not be snacking after dinner. There's no good can come from snacking after dinner. Okay? And I also told her to track her diet for a few days so I could see what's going on. So, first visit here in November, did those things, dietary changes, gave her gentian in tincture form, alcohol extract. Symptoms went from a 9 to basically a 0.5. And it stayed at that because she basically realized it was the sugar she was eating and the chips and some of the food sensitivities. She had a couple little episodes, but essentially none. So we basically almost 100% resolved her issues by improving her diet and with the herbs. Did I need the gentian? Maybe not. But I think it's just great to do that combination. And this is in an expensive treatment plan for her, okay? Here's another woman who came in, 83-year-old woman, high risk of dying from coronavirus. She had abdominal pain. She's Italian, another risk factor for coronavirus. Severe digestive issues, abdominal pain for years, didn't have any appetite. She gets some occasional reflux, lots of bloating. She had arthritis pain going on. Her bowels are very sluggish. She didn't want to take any medication. So what did she have? Indigestion, like the other person, atonic, food sensitivities, reflux. I thought she had lactose intolerance as well, and chronic constipation. I think a lot of people with chronic constipation, it's a food intolerance to dairy and eggs. That's the two big things for sure. Other foods can do it, but those are really big ones, okay? To give you an example, when my wife was pregnant with my daughter, if she had a Tim Hortons tea with a tablespoon of milk, that was enough to get passed into the breast milk, into my daughter, and make my daughter stool tube. turn green and to become colicky and not poop for a day. I wouldn't believe it unless I saw that, okay? So what the mother eats directly impacts what the breastfed infant experiences. In adults, if it causes constipation, no surprise it'll cause that in kids, okay? And I'm confident that was the case with my daughter, and we know she can do cheese, but she can't do the milk, okay? So we removed milk. I kept it simple. 83 years old, I had to kind of look at her diet, and I'm not going to remove the pasta right on the first visit. It's just too difficult. So remove milk, got her to increase her fiber, some more nuts and seeds, and I gave her the Digestion. So first visit, just removed the dairy. Big improvement, not totally resolved yet. And then I gave her the Digestion on the second visit, which grows in the Alps and is part of Italian culture anyways. You can see over time, we slowly got to reprogram her digestion. And, 8 out of 10 is pretty bad, and we got her down to a 0. So 2 simple things: remove a single food, tweak the diet a little bit, and take a digestive bitter, okay? And for patients like this is life-changing for them. And medical doctors cannot help these people, okay, by giving proton pump inhibitors and whatever else they give, okay? Very, very simple changes having profound, effects on quality of life in these patients, okay? One other thing I was going to show you is when I was working with the research department, we created a database. All the patients that went through the clinic students were asked to input their cases in. We did this for a few years, and then students revolted because it was too much work, and we discontinued it because it was just too time consuming. But we did get some interesting data out of it, okay? Now, one thing I did was I took functional dyspepsia, basically means indigestion with no known cause, meaning indigestion not caused by medications, infections, things like that. So just that atonic digestion, pretty much. And what I did was I combed the database that we had and looked for patients. These weren't my patients, but I looked for patients in the database that had the functional dyspepsia criteria and were given digestive bitters. Now, some of them had other things that they were given. Some of them were taking probiotics, and some of them were told to remove certain foods from the diet, everything else. So these are my cases. I think I usually do better than some of what this illustrates here. Now, in this case, 6 out of 6 is bad. 0 is good. So I don't know why they don't use the 10 scale, but this was a MyMop research scale. I think it's just more intuitive to use like 10 out of 10. So that's what I do with my patients. I don't like 6, and students never like 6, and patients didn't like 6. But anyways, we use 6 for this study because we had to. In summary, what you can see is the trend that you can see here is, although all these patients were treated differently, the single common thread that they all had was every single one of them was given digestive bitters. Digestive bitters will not cure functional dyspepsia alone. I think you have to look at food sensitivities, and they may not have figured out the food sensitivities or dealt with the stress or whatever else it is, but bitters important, okay? So here's some other things. So of the 7 patients, 5 of them had dietary changes. If it was mine, it'd be 7 would have that. Probiotics, I might give it to some of these. Glutamine, I would not give to any of them. Apple cider vinegar, I wouldn't bother giving. Fiber, I would just get them to get in their diet, okay? Appreciate, if you feel bloated and you're not having a bowel movement every day, you increase fiber in the diet. For some people, that may be sufficient, okay? Would you remove nut milks as well? No, I wouldn't remove nut milks. Coconut milk is probably the most benign. Almond milk bugs some people, but not usually. Soy is usually fine. That's my opinion. And they're just saying some good stuff here. True, in our culture, I'm assuming that's Indian culture, the first year the new breastfeeding mother eats very restricted and carefully prepared diet by the elderly women in the family. It's a good idea. Oh, one thing I was going to say is there's a bit of you don't want to overconsume food sensitivities because they can be an issue, but then it's still good for them to be exposed to eggs and peanuts and all these things to some degree, so they don't develop serious type 1 food allergies, because that's really bad, okay? Why not glutamine? Oh, glutamine's used to heal a leaky gut, so I think, it's this person I don't think has leak. These cases were not people that I looked at had leaky gut syndrome. You know, some people think everyone has leaky gut. I think it's a waste. I don't use leaky glutamine very often for people. I don't find it's necessary unless I think they actually have leaky gut going on. But I think it's not. I think it's benign. I just if I'm trying to not spend a lot of money on the patients, I don't like supplementing if it's not necessary. And when people have need glutamine, they're usually there's other things contributing to making them sick. Okay, how are we doing for time? Oh, let's take a break right now. Let's just take a. Let's come back at quarter two, maybe 10:46. Okay, 10:46. That's in 5 minutes, and then we'll go on to the next ones. Okay. Uh, if you have any questions, let me know. Okay, any questions, guys? You guys here? Can you hear me? Can you see me? Good. Sorry, I just took a mouthful of bar. I gotta eat something. Okay, so heartburn. Heartburn is something that I think we get great results as naturopaths. I'm going to explain how we treat it. Medical doctors are terrible at treating heartburn. Okay, where they do a pretty good job is if you have heartburn due to H. pylori infections. Otherwise, I think their approach is not ideal. So heartburn is basically when you have a burning sensation in either your stomach or your esophagus. So when you have it in your esophagus, it basically means stomach acid is burning up and coming in contact with the mucous membranes in the esophagus, causing symptoms. In the stomach, appreciate heartburn is not due to too much stomach acid. It's due to acid coming into contact with tissues that aren't designed to handle it. So in your esophagus, it can handle a little bit of acidity, but it's not able to handle the acid in the stomach at like a pH of 2. In your stomach, you have mechanisms to prevent acid from burning your stomach. You make mucus in there, and that contains like a bicarb buffering agent. So you should not get stomach acid, or you should not get stomach acid irritating the stomach, even if your stomach acid is battery acid at pH of 2. So the reason why people get stomach heartburn is because they're either taking drugs like ibuprofen or aspirin that suppresses mucus production. Just as an aside, talking about coronavirus, there's research that suggests taking NSAIDs to lower fever during coronavirus or just type of viral issues in general is not good. So I wouldn't do that if I had, at least look into the research a little more. I got to look into it myself. Other things that can mess up your stomach issues is like bisphosphates, which causes more of the GERD on the left, and corticosteroids. Excess alcohol intake can cause it. Infections like H. pylori will compromise the mucosal area in the stomach and also stress. Okay, so you got to make sure you address the underlying cause of the heartburn in general. Now, one thing I didn't write down here is food sensitivities. They can also cause heartburn indirectly as well. Okay, so somebody comes in with heartburn. The first thing I want to do is remove food sensitivities. Now, some people have chronic heartburn that's going on for months. If you have heartburn that's a daily thing that's been lasting for weeks, that's more likely to be a serious inflammatory issue of the stomach or the esophagus going on. That is different than if you get heartburn a few times a week, okay? So regardless, you want to remove food sensitivities. You want to increase the sphincter tone to try to prevent things from bubbling up into the esophagus, and bitters are great for that. You want to promote digestion. So if you are able to break food down better, it gets food to go down rather than come up. By protecting the mucus lining, ways you do that is by using demulcents. Either drink demulcents like slippery elm and marshmallow to coat the esophagus, or you use things like licorice or D-gel to increase mucus production. I don't normally try to suppress stomach acid or neutralize it, but in some cases it's indicated. If people have the occasional heartburn, they take a little baking soda, no harm in that. You're not dealing with the underlying cause, but if it's a rare thing, who cares? Sometimes if you have gastritis or inflammation in the stomach going on, you might want to reduce stomach acid. There's some herbs you can do that. There's also drugs, okay? Now, if they have H. pylori, and that's the cause of the heartburn, then you want to eradicate heartburn. Appreciate that most people, about 50% of the people around the world, may test positive to H. pylori, so they may have H. pylori living in the stomach, but it may not be the cause of their heartburn. And so eradicating it may not get rid of the heartburn issues. If they happen to have food sensitivities causing the heartburn, and you eradicate the H. pylori, they still have the food sensitivities. Finally, you may want to give vulnerary herbs that can help basically heal the ulcers, and astringent herbs that can stop bleeding if it's a serious ulcer. Okay? So that's kind of an overview of all that stuff. So what are the main heartburn actions or actions you use for heartburns? Demulcents, number one. You will never cause harm to someone if you give them, no, I don't like never. It's highly unlikely you cause any kind of aggravation of symptoms if you give a demulcent to someone with heartburn, okay? Obviously, licorice can mess up blood pressure, contraindicated during pregnancy as well, but otherwise it's safe, okay? Marshmallow and cyprium, I don't believe that either of those will increase blood pressure, and they can kind of help coat the esophagus and make you feel better. Bitters, you need to be a little bit careful because they can make heartburn better, but they can make it worse. So if you're suspecting serious gastritis, you may want to wait on the bitters. Okay, gastritis means inflammation of the stomach. Okay, so I usually know just by taking my case whether or not that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing. Antacids and anti-ulcers and astringents and antimicrobials, those are used rarely when I'm treating heartburn. Because if someone has a stomach ulcer, I would use these guys. But if it's just, you know, a little bit of reflux or a little bit of indigestion, I'm not going to use these guys, okay? So antacids, you've got the main herbs would be meadowsweet and cranesbill would be two big ones that I would use. Actually, chamomile would have an antacid effect as well, I was reading, but it's not commonly listed. Anti-ulcer means it can help heal the ulcers. Chamomile would be your go-to for that one. You can also use plantain and calendula as well. Other herbs like astringents, I don't use very often. I would only be using that if I suspected like a bleeding ulcer that I got to get under control. It's rare that I see that, okay? And then antimicrobials, to be honest with you, if someone came in with an H. pylori diagnosis, for practical reasons, I would say take the antibiotics, because there's a couple antibiotics they give. They give an antacid, and maybe sometimes another drug like bismuth, or herb, or not, it's not a herb, it's a mineral, bismuth, that's Pepto-Bismol. I might be like, you know, go with the conventional route, and then we'll deal with the food sensitivities and everything else. Go that route to kill stuff. If it doesn't work, because I have treated people who've received treatment for H. pylori and it just didn't eradicate it, then I say, okay, let's use antimicrobials. I think I've been successful treating with herbs, but I don't know if I'd be more successful in a head-to-head versus two antibiotics and a proton pump inhibitor. So if it's severe, I'm going conventional, and if it's resistant or mild, I might go more natural. Okay, so I do change and adapt based on how my patient presents. So with GERD, GERD is gastroesophageal reflux disorder. That means that you basically, for whatever reason, stomach contents is going up into the esophagus, okay? This, again, is not a problem with too much stomach acid. It's a problem with the acids going where it's not supposed to be going, okay? So the stomach acid may be just fine, or maybe even a little bit low, but still low meaning the pH is high, so high pH, low stomach acid. But it might still be enough acid to irritate the mucous membranes, or to even, you know, if it goes higher, you know, right around the stomach, it's going to be somewhat resistant. If it's bubbling up into the throat or even in the mouth while you're sleeping, you're going to get symptoms like tooth decay, sore throat, laryngitis, things like that. So what are the main causes of GERD? If you've got poor digestion, you're not breaking down your food well enough due to achlorhydria or hypochlorhydria related to atonic digestion, then that would be it. Spicy foods in general relaxes the lower esophageal sphincter. So cayenne, peppermint oil, all those things can aggravate stuff. Overeating. So if you increase the pressure in your stomach because you just ate too much and it sits there too long, it will go up. So eating smaller meals, like the yogis in India have been telling people for thousands of years, only eat to 70% of your stomach. That's good advice, for a million reasons. In our culture, like all you can eat buffet, let's eat 130% of what our stomach can handle. Like we've all done that. We've all felt awful. Also, if you lay down after you have a meal, you're more likely to get reflux than if you go for a walk. If you eat close to bed, which you will never do again, hopefully, unless you've been out partying, then that having all that food in your stomach, especially spicy food when you lay down, that'll get you. I've even had this happen. I don't usually have Zambuca. Zambuca's got a lot of fennel and anise in it, but we're having after dinner drinks with someone and they gave me a big shot of Zambuca. I don't normally have it, but I drank it. And, I like the taste of it. But we had a big meal, which I don't normally overeat, but sometimes it happens. And then that night, in the middle of the night, I was sleeping and I burped, and all that acid from my stomach, because I overate, it hadn't been digested, and because of the Zambuca with all that anise or fennel or whatever it is that's in it, it relaxed the lower esophageal sphincter, and all that acid just bubbled into my esophagus, and it just like woke me up in the middle of the night. It was awful. And so gave me an appreciation of how carminatives combined with overeating are a bad mixture. Okay. Also, fat delays emptying the stomach. I think that can make things more prone to getting reflux. So fish and chips would be more likely to cause reflux than eating, a chicken salad with rice or whatever. Also, certain drugs, like I mentioned, those osteoporosis drugs, which I'm not a big fan of. So mainly heartburn is a symptom that people get, but you can have silent reflux. And silent reflux means the acid's bubbling up, but you don't detect the burning sensation because it's not severe enough. But what can happen is your body can increase mucus production and aggravate asthma. Sometimes asthma is worsened because your body's trying to make more mucus to protect the esophagus so you don't feel the burning, but there's all this extra mucus in the lungs, okay? So if someone comes in with asthma, I might want to remove food sensitivities. Sometimes I've cured people of chronic asthma just by removing like dairy and eggs and a few foods, okay? Also, if someone has a 20-year history of chronic coughs and it's a dry cough, it could be due to an infection, obviously. But my wife just saw a patient that she had a 20-year history of chronic cough, was nothing worked, seen all these specialists, nobody could help him. And all she did was remove food sensitivities, and he's now cured. And that's because these chronic coughs were causing a little bit of reflux. Because what happens is the acid bubbles into the esophagus, stimulates the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve not only controls digestion, but also diaphragm. And so you get a reflux action there that causes a chronic dry cough. And so unexplained coughs, assuming it's not like tuberculosis and a lung issue, allergies and everything else, it could be due to reflux, okay? So how do we treat these? Avoid food triggers, number one. Get in that red flag food page. Increase lower esophageal sphincter tone. How do you do that? You give digestive bitters. Promote digestion. How do you do that? You give bitters. Protect the mucus lining. How do you give that? Now, in this case, you could give DGL, which increases mucus production in the stomach. But if they have reflux going on, I might be more inclined to give a demulcent like slippery elm or marshmallow that they add to water, not a tincture, but add to water to make a slimy, viscous substance that they can sip throughout the day to coat the esophagus. That's what I would recommend, okay? Or I might give a combination of both. You could give DGL and get them to drink some slimy water as well. Next thing you want to do is respect gravity. What I mean by that is don't go and overeat and then go slouch on the couch or lay on the couch or go to bed, okay? If you're getting reflux while you sleep at night, elevate the head of the bed about 5 to 6 inches. So stick a couple boards there so that your bed's on a bit of an angle, okay? And finally, overeating, okay? As I mentioned already, don't give them carminatives, avoid spicy foods. Now, I've had people taking ginger as an antiemetic while they're going through chemotherapy, and they start developing reflux from it. And they found that if they took gentian, it helped to reduce the severity, okay? I got a couple questions here. Are you asking, so Haley's got a question on COVID. Is everyone going to Instagram for advice? I'm not on Instagram. I think Instagram's great if you're beautiful, but you know, for nerdy people like me, I prefer Reddit. But anyways, do you have any free resources you can share for the public? You know what? I haven't done not yet. That's something I want to do. The question: do you think diaphragmatic massages could help? No idea. No idea. No, I have no idea. I've never done that. One thing I did do, just as an aside, kind of unrelated to this, when my son was born, couldn't get him to burp. I don't know why. I just couldn't get him to burp. So it was really, really challenging for the first little bit when he was born. And we have an osteopath on site that I got him to see the osteopath, and he did some kind of diaphragm thingy. And then my son was burping, which is great. So I love osteopaths. I refer my patients all the time to see the osteopath. They're awesome. My daughter, this is a side just to promote osteopaths. My daughter, when she was born, she was in labor a long time. She kind of got stuck in there. Her neck was all kinked. So when she was born, she wouldn't nurse on her right side, only on the left side. Took her to the osteopath, did a very gentle stretching, whatever he does, and then she was able to nurse on both sides. So what I love is finding people that are good at what they do so I can refer my patients to them. And you know what? Patients love it when you refer them to other people. And it's only good for your business if you say, you know what, I'm going to help you with this, but go see whoever, and they can really help with that. So with GERD, number one thing we want to do is a demulcent. In this case, I'm more likely to go with marshmallow or slippery elm and drink slimy water. So maybe add a teaspoon of slippery elm to about half a liter of water, or 250 mils of water, shake it up and sip through it today, okay? I would give bitters with meals, bitters, stomachic, whatever we want to say. Gentian, what I would do. So with meals, I would give gentian. Away from meals, if you're having a problem, take your marshmallow. You could do meadowsweet acutely if it's bad enough and you got to heal the esophagus. So if the esophagus is really irritated and inflamed, you might have to suppress things for a bit in order to calm down the inflammation. So you might start with meadowsweet, especially maybe at night when they have an empty stomach or something. And usually if people are on drugs, I tend to end up, if I'm trying to get them off their proton pump inhibitors, I usually say, your doctor said to take it once a day. Take it before you go to bed rather than during the day. That way, at least it's suppressing stomach acid when you're sleeping and not during the day when I want you to actually have a functioning digestive tract. Dietary changes you got to do with all of them anyways. And food sensitivities, avoid fat, sugar, too much spices, don't eat late, okay? So here's a woman. Now, my cases, you don't get cases where you only get heartburn. There's always combinations of stuff going on. So I haven't talked about gallstones yet, but I'm going to talk about it in a second. Yes, this treatment can be used for esophagitis, and reflux causes esophagitis, okay? The bitters, depending on the severity of the esophagitis, I would be more cautious. So depending on how they present would determine how I would proceed. So I might only give them demulcents visit number one before jumping to the bitters. Depends if I can get them feeling better or not, okay? So here's a case. I'm still seeing this person. Uh, I'm going to show you some cases where I screwed up because you know what? It's good for you guys to see how Dr. Gowan makes mistakes. I think this is one of them. So this woman came in. She had gallstones, pretty big ones, with cramping pain, upper right quadrant pain, especially with big meals. And she had all this heartburn and reflux going on with nausea, burning in the chest, bloating with meals. Okay, you can read this in more detail. She had this almost daily. The intensity was a 10 out of 10. Acid suppressing drugs like the proton pump inhibitors helped, but she was vomiting bile when she took it, so she didn't do it. And she also had some IBS where she was getting constipation and diarrhea. So I was treating primarily the gallstones initially, and because she had nausea going on, I figured she's got gallstones, heartburn, reflux, maybe H. pylori, but I got that ruled out. The nausea was going on significant. This whole irregular bowel. She had food sensitive. She also had some weird hand swelling thing, which went away with the treatment. So first visit, remove the red flag foods, healthy breakfast, DGL capsules. Told her to drink some chamomile tea, and then take a herbal tincture. Now, part of the reason I made her the formula, I made her a combination of gentian, globe artichoke, wild yam, and ginger. Okay, so I included ginger in this mainly because it's an antiemetic, and also because it helps with gallstone, increases bile production, anti-inflammatory. There's reasons why I put it in there. I was hopeful that the gentian would tighten up the lower esophageal sphincter and that the ginger wouldn't be an issue. In retrospect, what I should have done is not put the ginger in and put in something else instead. I probably would have done better instead of giving her DGL, given her marshmallow or silphium to sip to coat the esophagus. So this patient gave her this. I told her, stop it if it makes you worse. I didn't think it would, but you know what she did? She just kept taking it. She's like, you know what? I was feeling better with my gallbladder and everything else. Like I was really feeling better. My digestion felt better. Everything was felt better except my reflux actually got worse. And so it was a 10 out of 10 when she came in. And then she said, yeah, now it's like 11 or 12 out of 10. So I made that one worse because I gave ginger. And you know what? Yeah, whoops. Didn't think I would, but I did. Okay. So then I'm like, okay, sorry about that. You should have told me because I asked him. I always say, email me if you make it worse, but she didn't email me. She just kept taking it. Okay. So then I got her to run the H. pylori breath test because I wanted to see if that was positive. I gave her melatonin at night. Just as an aside, melatonin can help increase lower esophageal sphincter. It's a sleep hormone, but it actually has a lot of receptors in your GI tract, and there's research showing benefit for reflux and also for gastritis. Just a side note. And then I changed the tincture. I put licorice in instead, and I took the ginger out. Look what happened. Boom. Whole reflux, all of her symptoms got better. So I think this is a good one because in the end, it makes me look good, but it also makes me look human. I don't like to lie. I think I like cases where I don't like it. I'm kind of like a little embarrassed that oops, I should have known better. But when she came in, her primary concern was treating the gallstones, not the reflux. I don't know, I'm trying to make excuses. I screwed up, okay? But in the end, she's all better. Everybody's happy. It's all good, okay? Will you be testing these specific cases? No, I'm not going to be testing. You don't know any. These cases are to illustrate what happens. The take home, what would I be testing? Oh, ginger is a carminative, could make reflux worse. I think that would be a good take home here. Gentian, good for digestion. The reason why I chose the globe artichoke, the wild yam, the gentian for the gallstones is because all those three things, that's what her chief concern was for coming in. Her gentian, the globe artichoke and wild yam also lowers cholesterol. I think she had elevated cholesterol as well. So here's another guy. He had a chronic cough, 53-year-old woman. So this was the patient I saw, not my wife's case I saw recently. She had a relentless cough all day long, chronic cough, postnasal drip. I suspected she had reflux, was contributing to it, food sensitivities. So we gave her digestive bitter. I gave her tea with marshmallow and licorice and removed food intolerances. And you can see after the first visit, this thing that was like, her cough was a 9 out of 10. We got it way down to a 2 out of 10. That's in 2 weeks. And that's never happened to her before. Her postnasal drip also improved. So, and she took the tea as needed as well. So I give her 2 different types of herbal things to address it. Bitters for tightening up sphincters, and the tea that had marshmallow and licorice. So you're basically getting the marshmallow makes a slime, and the licorice increases mucus production. She had no blood pressure issues, so that was fine. And she drank that as needed for it, but she didn't end up needing it very often. So my whole treatment plan here, the tincture was probably $15. The tea was probably $5 or $5, so $20 treatment was all she paid out of pocket, and that's a pretty good outcome. I don't know where she is right now. She may not have come back. Now, in addition to having heartburn resulting from esophagitis due to a reflux, you can also have it due to inflammation and stomach ulcers. So gastritis means inflammation of the stomach. If the inflammation is very bad, it will progress to ulcers. And you can have stomach ulcers or duodenal ulcers. Those aren't so good. And so those are a little bit more challenging to treat. And the symptoms could be, for this sort of picture, would be kind of more of a chronic heartburn. Now, some people don't get heartburn with gastritis, but heartburn, some people get bad breath, especially if they have like an H. pylori infection, or if they're not digesting their food properly. They eat a meal, it's full, they get a lot of burping because they don't make enough stomach acid because the inflammation is telling their body to make less stomach, so they end up not digesting food. They feel nauseous as well. And if it's bad, which I don't see this very often in practice, they might be complaining of dark stools. And I've never seen this in practice, but it's in the textbooks, is that they are vomiting coffee grinds in their blood, it looks like, okay? So H. pylori is very common, and that could be the cause. But what I also see is people coming in who've been taking chronic non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen or even aspirin on a daily basis for heart disease will do it, okay? Corticosteroids will do it as well, stress. So what do? Remove the cause. If it's alcohol, drugs, whatever it is, you may have to decrease the acid short term and protect those mucous membranes and speed up the healing, okay? So foods, get rid of the H. pylori if it's there. They can do a blood test, which only tells you if they've been exposed to H. pylori. It doesn't tell you if they've eradicated or not. So if someone has never been tested, that would probably be the first thing you do, is a blood test, because it's easy to do. But if they've been tested before and treated and it still came back, you probably want to do a breath test where you drink radioactive sugar that is metabolized by the H. pylori, and then the H. pylori releases radioactive gas. They can measure and see whether it's active, okay? Protecting mucous membranes, how do you do that? Demulcents. Reduce stomach acid. You might want to use drugs or herbs. You can use both, and then heal that ulcer, okay? So your demulcents, antacid herbs, meadowsweet, that's the big one you got to know. Cranesbill also to some degree. Anti-ulcer vulneraries, we already talked about these. Chamomile would be my go-to. It's the classic herb in German tradition to take with gastritis. It's awesome because you can buy it anywhere and it's cheap and you can do it as a tea, okay? Astringents, maybe. The antimicrobials, maybe, okay? I don't like to go that route right off the bat. So here's a case of chronic gastritis. So 43-year-old woman, chronic heartburn, does not have a stomach ulcer. I asked her specifically, this was a student's, I'm going to blame the students for it. This is when I was supervising the clinic. This woman came in, chronic heartburn, had a lot. Students, when I saw her, I said, do you have a stomach ulcer? She said, no. I said, okay. She had epigastric, burning pain all day long, sore throat. So I thought she had reflux going on. That was the main issue, okay? So I was pretty convinced she only had GERD. But later, we found out she had H. pylori. It was H. pylori going on that was causing gastritis, and she had GERD secondary. So the first visit, we gave him gentian, did some dietary changes. After 1 week, she got worse. This is at one of the Parkdale teaching clinic, okay? And then I got worse. I'm like, I should have gotten better. And I said, you don't have a stomach ulcer? No. And I said, do you have H. pylori? And she said, yes. And the reason why this is a good example, a good case, is the question I asked her a question, she answered it, but not everyone realizes that if you have a stomach ulcer, if you have H. pylori, you probably have a stomach ulcer. So I dismissed the fact that when she told me she didn't have a stomach ulcer, I didn't even bother to ask her if she's been tested for H. pylori. We should have, okay? So we started her off on the wrong thing, even though if we would have asked the questions, and appreciate I wasn't in it, but I was supervisor, so it is my fault, unfortunately. So first visit gave her the wrong thing, made her worse. We changed everything, got her to take these things. She wasn't taking those things that we changed everything to, and she wasn't compliant, and things got worse. And now we've aggravated things, and then she stops coming, right? So that's two cases that are good learning experiences. Again, here's an example where I gave gentian when it wasn't, well, it wasn't that we were wrong, but she should have stopped taking it, but we aggravated things, okay? So I've only had two cases that I can think of where I just gave you the two cases that I can think of in the last, well, this case is actually probably 10, 15 years old, okay? So I learned a lot from that. I don't think I've repeated anything like that since, except for that ginger case I showed you. That was just a recent case. Other than that, those are two cases. Most of the time I don't cause aggravations, okay? Here's another guy who comes in with gastritis. 23-year-old male. He had been treated for H. pylori already before in March 2019. Okay, so about a year ago now, but I just saw him a couple months ago or a month ago. He still has heartburn and he takes acid blocking drugs. But because he had a concussion at work, some big piece of machinery fell on his head, he takes ibuprofen daily, about 4 to 6 of them every day. Now, he's always had digestive issues with some IBS-like symptoms, but he currently has this bad gastritis going on. And nobody bothered to tell him that it's probably the pain medication he's taking that's causing it. We were also waiting for his H. pylori test to be retested to find out if that was contributing. So I figured he had gastritis going on either due to the anti-inflammatory drugs or due to H. pylori. So first visit we did, we moved, sorry, I meant to get rid of that there. Remove your red plate foods. That's going to be for more of the chronic bowel issues going on. Got him to drink chamomile and peppermint tea, lots of that. I gave him this anti-ulcer tincture. So it has chamomile. Now you can drink it as a tea as well, but I want to make sure he's getting it because sometimes people don't do the tea. Chamomile, I put yarrow, I put licorice, and marigold. So chamomile is my vulnerary. It also has some antacid properties as well. Yarrow helps with healing of ulcers as well. Licorice increases your mucus production. The marigold is also a vulnerary. And what he found was when I gave him the tincture, he removed the red flag foods. We saw a dramatic decrease in both his heartburn and his IBS symptoms by week 2. He then stopped taking the proton pump inhibitors, and we got him to back off on the ibuprofen, and basically his heartburn is completely gone, okay? Which is pretty cool. So within a month, completely gone and I don't have him taking that tincture anymore, now that I got things under control. And he's off his acid blocking drugs, so we did great there. Now, we're still trying to figure out what foods he's sensitive to. We know there's something, but I suspect that we probably found some of the foods that he's sensitive to, but not all of them. And it may also be that he could have, because of all the antibiotics, he could have like a yeast overgrowth in his gut, and that may be still contributing to some of the IBS symptoms. So we've addressed that partially, not entirely, and we're still working on that. Like I'm still seeing this. I probably have them booked this week, okay? that I'm going to have to change to phone consult only. So how do you guys like these cases? Are these cases good for you guys? I mean, I think these, when I was a student, I didn't get a lot of cases like this. I think these things are cool because this is real life stuff. This is what I deal with all the time. And I don't give you every single case because after a while it gets kind of boring because this is good stuff. So bloating and gas, thanks for the feedback, guys. So bloating and gas, this can be associated with a lot of conditions. Now, there are herbs that you take for bloating gas. When you hear bloating gas, you think of carminatives. And that's a good thing to do. You know, if you get feel bloated and gassy after you've eaten a meal, you know, you have some peppermint tea or whatever, you're going to feel better. You eat some fennel, you're going to feel better. Appreciate that. You need to figure, like, as a herbalist, you might only give digested bitters and carminatives. As a naturopath, I'm going to have to look at it and say, what's causing it? Like, well, what is the cause? So food sensitivities, big one. If anyone eats a lot of sugar, they're going to get fermentation going on in their guts and feel bloated. If you eat a lot of fiber that you can't break down, if I eat a bunch of kidney beans, you know, no matter what, I'm going to feel bloated unless I take Beano or something. Or if you have lactose intolerance. So basically, if you are deficient in an enzyme like lactase or beta-glucoxidase, which is responsible for breaking down. No one has that, but your gut bacteria might. Then you're not going to do well. Also, if you've got weird bugs in your gut, like I remember when I had Giardia, the sulfur-smelling burps and gas was, you know, very unique with that. Taking some chamomile tea is not going to get rid of that problem. You need to take something that's going to kill it. Same thing with candida. If you've got a lot of yeast overgrowth in your gut, chamomile and peppermint might help the symptoms, but it won't deal with the underlying cause. Also, read the label on products. Someone might be taking like a coconut-based yogurt, which you think should not contain any food sensitivities in it. But when you read the ingredients, they may have used inulin or chicory, and those things, or FOS and probiotics. All those three things are prebiotics. They feed gut bacteria, but they make people really gassy. And I tend to really discourage people from taking it, even though it might be good for your gut flora. It can make people uncomfortable, and you can see that distended abdomen when they take it sometimes. If you're eating a diet with lots of vegetables, fruits and vegetables and fiber and stuff, you probably won't need it. Also, if you're not having, when your bowels are sluggish, you could be having a bowel movement every day, but it could be delayed. Like it may be that your bowel movement that you had today is from the meal you ate, 72 hours ago. And so if I don't know if they have a sluggish bowel or not, you can get them to eat beets and then say, eat the beets and then record how many hours it takes for you to see beets in your stool. And that's kind of one way to figure out, oh yeah, you're having a bowel movement every day, but it's backlogged, so to speak. You don't want to have, you want to be clearing stuff, relatively quickly, not like in 6 hours, but 24 to 36 hours is not a bad amount of time. And then also, if you're just got sluggish digestion due to atonic digestion, bloating and gas may be the symptom they come in with, but there could be other things. So if someone comes and says, I just feel bloated and distended, food sensitivities, too much sugar, bugs, and bowels movements. Those are all the things that I'm thinking, okay? So remove food sensitivities, stimulate digestion. You might supplement with enzymes like Beano or lactase enzyme if they really want to drink milk, which I would not recommend. Get those bowels working better. Usually the healthy breakfast with the fiber I recommend. Get it going. Help get the gas out. That's where your carminatives help. Decrease cramping. Carminatives and antispasmodics do that. Improve gut flora. So that's where you might want to kill bugs like yeast or Giardia or whatever could be the issue and take probiotics. So carminatives is number one for treating the symptoms, but beyond that, if all you give them is like a peppermint oil capsule, they may feel less bloating and symptomatically better, but it won't cure them. Bulk laxatives, if they're constipated, will benefit them, but it can also make the bloating and gas worse. So you got to watch that. Digestive bitters might help, but if you haven't removed the food sensitivities, they're still going to have the issue. And finally, antimicrobials, I wouldn't necessarily give this to everyone, but if you remove food sensitivities, you give them a digestive bitter, and they're still not changing that much, you might want to go this route. Okay. Now, colic basically just means cramping of smooth muscles, and this is associated with, let's say, constipation, or you could, and that's colic in the bowels, or diarrhea. You can get colic with it. Gallstones causes biliary colic. You could even have what do you call that? Kidney colic. There's a name for it. Anyways, can't think of it. So any kind of areas where you get spasm of the smooth muscles will result in that. So colic can be treated symptomatically using antispasmodics. But again, bloating, cramping with a baby, if it's colicky, babies by default are lovely and perfect. You know, babies are perfect when they're born. They only cry when they're hungry. When they're hungry, they cry. When they've got intestinal cramping, they cry. Otherwise, they should be happy. So if your baby's crying a lot, I have to assume it's a food sensitivity, they're hungry, they're teething, or a diaper change. You know, that's the main stuff. Or they're cold or hot. You know, like it's basic survival stuff. They're not just being jerks, you know. It's only when they become 3 years old that they turn into jerks. But babies aren't jerks, you know. They just want attention and to be fed and changed and all that stuff. Okay. I feel so. Vidge is asking a good question. Can cruciferous vegetables that contain sulforaphane give gas? Definitely, without a doubt, cruciferous vegetables can be gas forming. Broccoli is, you know, notorious for making people gassy. The fiber in it's called, I think it's raffinose that's in cruciferous vegetables that can cause bloating. The sulforaphanes in it might give a nice sulfury smell to it as well. I remember once when I was a student, or maybe I just graduated, I was experimenting with things, and I read somewhere that juicing cabbage was a good thing to do. It was good for your gut and heals the gut and healthy and awesome and everything. So I went on this kick where I was juicing cabbage, and for the kick lasted like 1 day, but anyways, drank a whole bunch of cabbage juice, went to bed. In the middle of the night, I woke up. I'm like, oh my God, what is that smell? What's going on? I was all confused. The room smelled awful. My girlfriend at the time woke up and she's like, what's wrong with you? And so the gas from the cabbage juice was so awful, it woke me up from sleep. And it was causing some cramping pains as well. So although it's good for you, it's not good for your relationships. We're no longer together, but not for that reason. So yeah, cabbage juice, you gotta watch that. So now, cabbage and broccoli are good for bowel movements, good for a million things, but it's just too much, okay? Yeah, that'll happen. I'm glad to hear you like to experiment as well there, Rich. So anyways, with colic in kids, removing food sensitivities, don't give them too much sugar, make sure they're having a bowel movement every day. You know, probiotics, the funny thing with probiotics, my daughter gets this dairy-free probiotic and works great on her. And it works, I recommend it to kids all the time. For some reason, whenever my son takes it, he gets a digestive issue and doesn't have a bowel movement as regularly. And I don't understand why. There's nothing in it that should cause the issue. And my wife and I are like, this is weird. And we have no explanation. I've never seen this before, but we know from trying them, keep trying it doesn't help them. So you got to take the parents seriously. They're not always right, but you know, they often know what's going on. Babies don't usually get an atonic digestion, more so with adults. Same thing with infections. Those aren't usually the things I jump to with kids. But with adults, remove your food, with anyone, remove food sensitivities, reduce your sugar, promote the bowel movements, relieve bloating, decrease cramping, improve gut flora, okay? So do that elimination diet, the red flag foods, that would be number one. With kids, you could give them carminatives, like a little bit of peppermint chamomile tea. I I give my daughter tinctures, throw a little licorice in it, chamomile, fennel. Like there's one that she loves. It's got licorice, fennel, chamomile, a little bit of ginger in it. And she would drink it. 40% alcohol, everything. She loves it. I have to hide it from her. So kids can take tinctures. I don't love the fact that they're getting a lot of alcohol, but small amounts, I'm not concerned about it. And if you are, that's what probably a responsible parent would do, you can always do chamomile and peppermint teas, and give it to them that way. Make it really strong. And kids like, the thing I've discovered with children, it's not just the medicine that helps; it's the route of administration, and they love the dropper. That comes with little tincture bottles. They love that. On the weekend, my daughter was having. She had a little flare up with some weird digestive thing that's now gone, but she was complaining. She's in a lot of pain. And you know what? I love giving my kids homeopathics because they love the whole ritual. They love the bottles. They love to shake them up. They take them and they stop complaining. And, whether it's, I don't use it a lot in practice, but, my wife and I are like, whoa, don't take too many of those. This is powerful medicine. We kind of like snicker and wink at each other, but it's great for kids because sometimes kids just want to take something and it makes them feel better. And that's one of the beauties of giving them something like homeopathy, which, the scientific community thinks that it has a placebo effect, and maybe it does, but there's still, sometimes there's a place for that if it is placebo. So I do like using it sometimes. But because of the stigma attached, I don't use a lot in practice. That's my opinion. So, and anyway, my daughter was taking homeopathics on the weekend, and it was, I gave her other things too, but it was good for her to have that. Now, constipation. Chronic pancreatitis. Chronic pancreatitis is a little trickier. Agrimony is a classic word that people use for chronic pancreatitis. A few other things. Yeah, that one's a little harder for me to talk about. I don't see it as much, although I think I have a patient I'm treating right now that has it, and they have elevated triglycerides. That's going on, so we're trying to address that. That's more complicated. I'm not even addressing that during this session. So I used to see patients with chronic pancreatitis a lot at the HIV clinic because one of the drugs used to cause that. So I'm going to have to skip that one, Vidge, only because I've got limited time and I don't have any like awesome cases for it. So what do you think about that? Constipation. You guys know what that is. Causes, if they're eating enough fiber and they're drinking enough water and they're getting exercise, it's going to probably almost always be a food sensitivity, okay? So you want to remove possible food sensitivities. Eggs and dairy are classic ones. Whey protein, like I said. I want to give them some fiber as well. Now, one thing that's worth mentioning is if a patient comes in, first visit, I'll give them the healthy breakfast and remove food sensitivities. Usually that gets rid of the problem. If it doesn't, I might recommend they do an IgG blood test, which I don't recommend to a lot of people. It's pretty controversial, but I do use it. It's useful. And if that doesn't fully get rid of it, then I have to wonder, do they have something else going on? And there is, if you look at some of the research on this is something I've discovered in the last few years, is that some methane-producing bacteria are associated with constipation, and the methane may slow down transit time in the bowels. Other bugs that produce hydrogen, that may be associated with diarrhea. And I'll show you some SIBO results for that. So if people have what's called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, you can do a test for it. You give them sugar to drink it, and then you measure the gas that's being expelled from their mouth, and it'll tell you if it's got methane or hydrogen, and that may be associated with their constipation, diarrhea, or whatever. Okay, so that's something I would want to rule out. Drugs, there's a bunch of drugs that cause constipation. You know, always ask what medication people are on, sedentary lifestyle. So that's usually it. So with acute constipation, if they normally have a bowel movement, like if I'm traveling and I'm on a 30-hour flight, my meals are all messed up, I'm not active, I haven't been able to drink enough water, I don't have my normal bowel rituals where I have my coffee, wake up in the morning and go, or I'm too scared to use toilets in the airplane or whatever, then if you skip a few bowel movements or you miss them, you might start getting acute constipation. Usually it resolves pretty quickly, but if it doesn't, you might want to take a laxative. And that's where you would want to take either an osmotic laxative or a stimulating laxative, okay? And you might want to relieve some of the bloating and gas associated with it, treating symptoms with that. And if you get cramping, you want to try to normalize peristalsis, okay? In the case of acute constipation, if someone hasn't had a bowel movement for 48 hours, I would not recommend taking a whole bunch of fiber like Metamucil or even just eating too much fiber, like overdosing on fiber, trying to get the bowels to go. You want to get more hydration in the stool. You don't want to get more fiber in because it'll just make the bloating, gas, and even potentially the constipation worse, okay? So my go-to is osmotic laxatives like magnesium bisglycinate, or I think magnesium citrate's better as a laxative, but bisglycinate's good as well. Rarely do I recommend stimulating laxatives like senna or castor oil. And if you're in discomfort, you could take like fennel tea or chamomile, peppermint, anise, things like that might help as well. Okay. With sluggish bowels, this is more of a chronic issue, and this is where you're going to more likely have people responding better to just removing food sensitivities. And even if they have food sensitivities, eating some more fiber is probably going to help that situation, okay? So remove the food sensitivities, promote digestion. So if you give someone bitters get more stomach acid, more bile release, and all these things. Bile also acts as an indirect laxative because bile irritates the intestinal tract and promotes peristalsis. So bitter things often get things moving. A bulking agent, some kind of fiber source is good. You might still want to give them a little bit of magnesium before they go to bed. It helps with muscle relaxing, and it can pull a little more water into the bowels, which can help even if they've got the food sensitivities, get them feeling better until you can figure out what's causing it. If they get some cramping and bloating, give them some carminatives. You might want to give them probiotics. Never a bad thing to give people probiotics. And especially if you suspect that they have it's methane-producing bacteria, you might want to test for it and treat as an infection rather than, you know, as a food intolerance, okay? They just asked what type of magnesium. We have both magnesium bisglycinate and magnesium citrate in the clinic. Those are the two go-to. I like citrate better for bowels. And I think magnesium bisglycinate is a little better absorbed, so it's better for maybe stress and anxiety and sleep and stuff like that. But you know what? They both work. I think magnesium citrate is not as well absorbed, so it may be better for the bowels, and it tastes better if you want to give it as a powder. So I have powdered magnesium citrate that you can easily adjust the dose, like half a teaspoon, a full teaspoon as needed, and it's more cost effective. While the magnesium bisglycinate comes in 200 milligram capsules, they take 2 or 3 pills before they go to bed. That'll do the trick, but it's not as cost effective for constipation. Okay. Magnesium oxide, I think it probably works, but I don't usually use it. It's like the rust of the magnesium. Okay. So sluggish bowels, remove food sensitivities. Then you get the bulk laxative. So people take psyllium in the form of Metamucil, or you just do ground psyllium, or you eat the breakfast I'm recommending, the flaxseed and the chia. Slippery elm is also a form of fiber, bulk laxative. You could use that. Marshmallow fiber as well. Aloe vera gel, not the resin. Your digestive bitters will indirectly work as a laxative by helping to break food down and get things moving along through, bile stimulation. Your carminids will help with some of the symptoms like the bloating and the cramping that can occur with it. Osmotic laxative, so magnesium is a good supplement, but most things, just so you know, kiwis and prunes, for example, are great laxatives, and prune juice doesn't have very much fiber. So I always wonder, why does prune juice work? Because it doesn't contain much fiber. And I looked at the research on it. It contains sorbitol. Sorbitol is found in a lot of berries, but particularly high in prunes, and I think kiwi has some as well. And sorbitol is an alcohol sugar that's not well absorbed. So what happens when you eat prunes, you basically don't absorb the sorbitol, the sugar. It remains in the lumen of the bowel, and then it basically pulls water into it, okay? So that's how prunes work. Vitamin C, if you take more than 500 milligrams, most of that's going to remain in the bowel, pull some water in. If you take, 3,000 milligrams of vitamin C in a single dose, most people are going to end up having some pretty loose stools with that, okay? Now, other things you can do is a stool softener. If you drink enough oil, olive oil, flaxseed oil, or things like mineral oil, which isn't absorbed at all, it remains in the lumen of the bowel and kind of coats the intestines and becomes kind of interspersed amongst the stool and softens it up. Sometimes when people take fish oils, like, oh, my bowel movements are a lot better taking fish oil. That's great, but it makes me suspect that they're not absorbing the fish oil very well. It's probably remaining in the bowels, but anyways. And then antimicrobials only if I suspect they have those methane-producing bugs, okay? So here's a woman, 60 years old, chronic constipation. She's always had it her whole life. It's just getting worse regularly. 1 bowel movement per week. That's awful. Like, I feel awful if I don't have 1 bowel movement in the morning, right? So lots of bloating. She's got all this burping. Her abdomen's distended. She gets heartburn as well. So I'm thinking food sensitivities and poor digestion and reflux going on. So my usual, remove red flag foods, give her gentian with meals, healthy breakfast. Like, this is the same treatment I give lots of patients, for reflux and other things, So the first visit, I didn't give her any laxatives. I want to see what would happen. And with that first visit, like a very significant improvement in her symptoms. I had to go 3D on you for this graph because of the way it was hard to see the lines otherwise. So burping, flatulence, and bloating all improved dramatically from December 19th or December 4th to 19th. So that's 2 weeks. And then I said, you know what? You're still not 100%. Take some magnesium as needed. And you can see here, we've pretty much got her like cured of it. I mean, 1 out of 10 for the burping, she can live with that. It's not a big deal. So $15 for the gentian and probably $22 for magnesium, and she's cured. And that's how I get people to give me reviews on, Google. They just get good results and they tell their friends, right? And look at her bowel movements. Remove the red flag foods, healthy breakfast, gentian. She went from having 1 a week to having 1 daily. And then when we gave her the magnesium, that gave her that little extra bit. So now she's having not just 1 daily, but a little bit more than 1 daily. So about 10 per week versus 7 per week versus the original 1 per week. Like, that's pretty awesome. But again, give credit to the gentian, increasing the fiber, removing the food sensitivities, and the magnesium, okay? Now, Alan's got a good question. How long do I recommend the magnesium? Magnesium, I might do it for a little bit and then say, you know what, you just take this as needed. And if you want to take a little bit before bed, I can live with that. It's not the worst thing because a lot of people are deficient. But it's easy for them to take it as needed. The gentian, after a month or so, they may just only take it once in a while. And this person's heartburn, did that show up here? But no, their heartburn didn't show up there, but her heartburn went away as well. Okay. Here's another one, chronic constipation. She's obese, overweight, high cholesterol, high triglycerides, lots of bloating going on. So with her, remove red flag foods, chamomile and peppermint tea. Now, chamomile is also good for diabetes and cholesterol as well. gave her the gentian, gave her my healthy breakfast in there. Here I gave her citrate as well later on. So I removed her red flag food, healthy breakfast, gentian, chamomile, bloating, constipation dramatically improved. Mix in the magnesium as well. You can still see she's pretty much resolved there with that. And we didn't have to do any testing. Another person, chronic constipation and burping. This case is a little bit more interesting. She had bloating every day, 9 out of 10. Lots of burping going on all the time. And this was kind of weird. I thought, you got something's different going on here. And she'd have maybe 3 to 4 bowel movements a week. So with her, I did my usual with removing the red flag foods, the chamomile and peppermint tea, gave her gentian with meals, the breakfast. There was some improvement, but the constipation didn't get better. Okay? So I thought, well, that's weird. So then I read in this whole thing about this is the methanogenic bacteria causing constipation. So I was like, okay. So we did a SIBO test with her where she drank some sugar water, that special that comes with this kit, and you breathe in these tubes at timed intervals. And it basically showed, now this graph basically shows that her methane gas is elevated. Those 2 points that are kind of weird, those are ones that she screwed up somehow when she did it herself. So that's why we do an average of a whole bunch. And so this basically means suspected that she's got SIBO with elevated methane. And this directly correlates to the fact that she has that burping going on along with the constipation. So here we gave her a whole bunch of antimicrobials. We took a while to treat her, and you can see that burping constipation. Now with this treatment, we finally got things resolved. It took a long time though, but appreciate it. I'm not using the hardcore antibiotics. I'm using natural supplements that are take some time. So we got things under control, but it did take months. Okay, but that's another one for you. They just hear your questions there. 1 second. Red flag foods entirely during treatment period. Yeah, for the most part. I mean, sometimes what they'll do is they'll reintroduce, like, you know what, I have a little bit of, like, nobody's perfect. So sometimes something will sneak in and they'll say, you know what, I think you're right. I think the peas do bug me, so I'm going to stay away from that. Or they may be saying, like, you know what, I've been eating rye bread. I had a little bit of pasta, normal wheat pasta. It didn't seem to bug me, so I'm going to have a little bit in my diet. So I'm not too strict with it. It depends on what's going on with them, okay? Some foods I don't reintroduce. It depends on the case. Like, I'm pretty fluid in the way I handle it. I get people to remove those foods, and then someone's like, I just really want to eat eggs again, and they're really begging to get the eggs back in. I'm like, well, I don't think you should eat a lot of eggs, but if you want to, what I recommend you do is just go eat a whole bunch of eggs. Like, if they really want to know, go eat eggs for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and see what happens. And usually they feel awful. Sometimes people can have eggs once a week, a few times a week, they're okay. They just can't do it daily. Some people can't do it any amount of milk. Some people can have milk in their coffee and they're fine, but they can't eat ice cream. So this is where, even though I'm using the same treatment approach with all these patients, every single patient is getting a custom diet eventually. Like I might start off making people do all the same, but even then, like, I tell people to avoid pistachios and almonds, but if they eat, but I'm like, okay, you're doing pretty good. And they're like, well, I like pistachios. I eat some. I say, sure, go and eat them. Let's see what happens. If they don't have any issues, I'm like, yeah, eat pistachios. They're good for you. Okay. So I do. I get people to track what they're eating. Another thing that's pretty useful for everything we've talked about is if someone comes in and they've been following the diet, they're doing well, and they get the occasional flare up. And I'm like, well, I want to know what you eat right before you got the flare up. So track all that down. So, so I usually get people to start with those red flag foods, and depending on how much, some people are like, I don't even care if I ever eat those foods again. I don't even like, peas. I hate peas, and I don't ever want to eat them. Like, that's fine. But if they really, really want something, I would like eating normal ice cream. I would strongly caution someone from eating that. I say, why don't you try the coconut ice cream instead? But eventually they're going to eat something that's going to aggravate them, and they'll decide for themselves, And like I said, I eat beer and pizza even though it bugs me. So I'm not going to continue these today, Ali. So what I'm going to do is, how many slides do I have? I got a bunch. So what I'll do is continue these next week because we still have 2 more lectures, I believe. Is that correct? Uh, 2 more lectures, and if my wife goes into labor and I can't deliver the lecture for some reason, and I don't want Pickerel to do it because I'm kind of mid-sentence, mid-case, so this shouldn't be an issue, but I do have these recorded from last year as well if I had to, but I'm really hopeful that I can go through it or just record it if I have to. So these are unusual circumstances these days. Between the pandemic and babies and my pregnant wife, this is a little more interesting. So presume that I'm going to be lecturing the next 2 Mondays. Worst case scenario, I post a recording if I had to. Okay, does that sound okay with you guys? Any questions before we go? Are you guys enjoying these lectures? This is interesting. Did you have a question? If you can ask me, what was it? Thank you. All right. Sounds like we're good. So you guys have a wonderful day. Stay safe. Avoid your friends and family as much as you can. And hopefully next week, the coronavirus, the curve will start to flatten. I don't think it's going to, but I am hopeful that maybe people. I'm going to post that link now. Please share that with your friends and family. I do take that social distancing seriously. Okay. Bye for now, guys.